Hello and welcome to the program. This is the Ecomodernist channel live. I'm Carl Pauls. I'm here with Gabe Ignetti, Chris Bergen, and our special guest, Mike Conley, is back. He's here to talk with us about his latest work, the LNT Report, How Bad Science Made the World Afraid of Nuclear Power. This is a continuation of last week's show where we cover the story of how hopefully well-meaning scientists created a century of bad precedent. Mike is also the author of Earth is a Nuclear Planet, The Environmental Case for Nuclear Power, and A Roadmap to Nowhere, which is a reality check on renewable energy. Both of these he co-wrote with retired electrical engineering professor Tim Maloney. Welcome to the program.
Hi.
So welcome back.
Happy to be here.
We kind of did the whole story. We did like the background of the foundational story. And in brief, it's sort of the idea that way back then, we were pretty sure that humans could just go bad. But now what's different about like genetics has our knowledge of this base science just improved so vastly that we could not come to the same conclusion today?
No, I think we could have always come to the same conclusion. I mean, his linear conclusion was just freaking weird. To briefly review, he found evidence at very, very high doses of genetic damage with radiation. And you could draw a line through those high doses. The more radiation, the more bad stuff. The more less radiation, the less bad stuff. That's linear, right? But this is just super high doses. And I'll give you an idea of how high it is. 130 million times normal background radiation that we all receive as life forms on this planet. He extrapolated those linear results at super high doses all the way down to zero and declared that the same relationship exists no matter how low or how high the dose. And there's nothing in biology that does that acts like that. And it was almost as if he wasn't thinking of these things as living cells, but rather as mechanisms, which are like an automobile, where if you damage the automobile, it can't repair itself. Therefore, any little bad thing is a bad thing because it's not going to get fixed because mechanics don't exist and cars don't fix themselves. And that seems to be the way he viewed living cells. That was in 1927. And so 400 years earlier, in 1538, Paracelsus explained to the world that there is no such thing as a safe quantity. All substances have poisonous qualities depending on the dose. Mm-hmm. So for 400 years, we've known that there's no such thing as an inherently safe substance. It depends on the dose. A perfect example is water. You drink too much water in one sitting, you're dead.
Yeah.
It's integral to life, but too much of a good thing will kill you. Same thing with radiation. On the flip side, because the body can repair itself, very low doses of radiation can act as a stimulant or a stressor that prompts an adaptive response. This is the biology he ignored. Okay?
And that's not new.
No, it's not new. It's immunology. I mean, take a look at what Pasteur. So he was like immunizing people 40, 50 years before Muller did his work. And Pasteur's work was super famous because he showed that vaccination, the concept of giving a little bit of the dog that bit you, is basically what it is. It's a little bit of the dog that bit you. Beekeepers do the same thing. They will sting themselves before the season, so the body goes, oh, that stuff, I remember how to fix that, and all the little mechanisms like beef up. So that whole concept of an adaptive response to a stressor was known for centuries before Mueller did his work in 1927. And for some weird reason, he's like, oh no, this is different.
And that is the concept. The concept is, oh, there's no safe dose of whatever.
The
It's
linear
either
no threat. Yeah, yeah.
a poison
exactly.
or it's not. Yeah.
Yes, exactly. His method is called the linear no, model is called the linear no threshold, meaning the effects are linear all the way down to zero, and there is no safe level or threshold below which everything is groovy. Okay. It was not only unproven because he had no data. I mean, literally, actually, factually, no data to back him up in his original paper. You read his original paper, there is no data. There's no materials and methods section. How did I do whatever I did to come up with my thing? It was just an assertion.
I think he said, I'll be publishing this data shortly in a little while, and then a little while never came. Is that correct?
Me. Trust.
Well, yeah, it was something along those lines, but actually, that was similar, but that was Stern and Uphoff and Stern in 47. We can get
that was someone else. Okay.
Yeah, no, but it was the same kind of vibe. It's like what happened is he put out his paper and he got a world of attention, and then he presented his theories or his thoughts in Berlin, and talked about some studies that he had done that he didn't bring the data for or something like that. I can't remember the exact details. Read the book. And then for the years afterwards, he tried to run other experiments to validate his opinion. And they kept failing. And the esteemed scientist he used to verify his findings came up with something radically different after 1 year of meticulous study. Okay, a guy named was Ernst Caspari. And Ernst Caspari was a well-regarded PhD entomologist, DNA Drosophila geneticist, Drosophila the fruit flies. And he was like a full tilt boogie, no kidding, he knows what he's doing in the lab kind of guy. And so Mueller turned him loose on this. He spent a year and he came back and said, well, sorry, boss, but there is definitely a threshold. And when I did the calculations, and it's not even calculations, it's arithmetic. I did it in the book, and it comes out that he was saying there was a very substantial threshold of like 166 millisieverts a year, somewhere in that neighbor. I can't remember the numbers. Like I said, I just woke up. Mueller was, of course, miffed because it flew directly in the face of his now very popular idea, which people were calling a theory, though he had no data to back it up. And things get complicated from there. I don't know how deep you want to get into this, but I mean, I got to write a movie about this. You know, in fact, Ed's pushing me. Ed Calabrese is just like, Mike, there's a movie here, and I'm like, yeah, I know. You know,
Be like the reverse of Oppenheimer, where
it's kind of like Tucker Gone Bad or whatever. You know, yeah, right.
So I want to be in it.
Yeah. we'll find a role for you, Gabe. I promise.
All right.
So Caspari had data that, if not a refutation, did not support Mueller's conclusion. Do we have more modern data? Like, I think Geraldine Thomas is a great researcher, has gone over many decades of data from the fallout of Chernobyl, and so that's the Royal College of London Chernobyl Tissue Bank, and she's an expert in her own field, and is part of the UN committee on the effects of radiation. And even with the linear no threshold, the numbers are so tiny, and yet we're still down from the predicted numbers to indeterminate because we're not.
What do you mean down? What do you mean down from the predicted numbers? Trying to follow you here.
Oh, so the original UN Scientific Committee on the Effects of Radiation, UNSCEAR, they predicted up to 4,000 cancer deaths. And this number has been adjusted, and it is now indeterminate.
And see, that's what it is. If you take the pure LNT model, it estimated statistically that there would probably be 4,000 in what is called statistical deaths down the road from Chernobyl. Of course, this is an extrapolation and a guesstimate based on whatever data could be gathered and whatever hallucinations you can add to it. And he was pretty good at it. And so what they did is there was a downwind cloud from Chernobyl, right? And people were affected. How much and how badly were they affected? Well, if you take the LNT theorem, not even a theorem, it's an idea. And if you add up all the particles that went downwind and you looked at the population and you divvied it all up and distributed it equally and all that happy crap, you get an estimation of 4,000. Reality proved starkly different in the 25, 35 years since Chernobyl. The most affected downwind area is called Bryansk. Okay. I'm not sure if that's in Ukraine or Belarus now. Anyway, it turns out that the people that were dusted downwind 30 years later had a 15% lower rate of solid cancer than the wider Russian population. And so they're using these statistical models to come up with some scary future estimate of harm. And then 35 years later, when you get to the future and you measure everything, it's BS, bad science. It's exactly opposite of what they say. But that 4,000 number stuck, and everybody's like, "Oh Lord Almighty, we can't do nuclear because well, look what happened. Look what's going to happen with these poor people that got dusted. They're going to be roaming around in cities like the dawn of the dead." Like the same thing that happened in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. There were those hellscapes. Can you imagine going there now? There's people crawling over glowing rubble. No, they're not. Yeah,
I've seen pictures of that.
Yes.
They have baseball teams serving stuff, fried octopus in the stands with very pretty girls smiling. It's a
and look what's
wonderful
happening
place
when
to
they
visit.
go home. They grow a second head, and then they just, exactly, And so there is this fiction that's been built in the public mind about radiation that does not hold up to later scrutiny at all. Compounding the problem is that we can't do radiation experiments on humans, at least not to my knowledge, right? So we have to do epidemiological studies. What's that? Well, that's where you take a big group and you screen them and you make sure that what kind of health they have and all that good stuff. And then they worked around nuclear material and some other large group didn't. And let's look at the difference. The problem is, at very low doses of radiation, the damage from radiation, if it should occur, looks exactly like cellular damage from other stressors, like oxidation or mutagens or toxins. There is no difference in what it looks like and in how the cell repairs it. And so you go down to the cellular level and there's all the crap going on. You got the cell next door making formaldehyde because cells do that. And, you got toxins and stressors in the knucklehead whose body you're a part of is smoking or not, or drinking or not, or has diabetes or likes fatty food or what the hell ever. And all this stuff is going on at the cellular level. And I don't know if you know how busy a cell is, but oh my God. We'll give you an example. There is a total of 2 meters of DNA in every cell. That's about 7 feet of DNA if you strung it all together, okay? Those strands are repaired to the tune of about 10,000 repairs per day. And I did the calculations in the book. And it's something like 6 repairs a second in every single cell. So you got all this busyness going on, and somebody goes, "Oh, let's zap them with radiation and see what happens." And it's just like, well, how can you tell? It kind of gets folded in with all the other repair. And so to try to divine, well, what was the radiation damage? What was the oxidation damage? What was the mutagen damage? Just like it's impossible. So statistical estimations are done. And if they're predicated on the idea that there is no safe dose, you're going to get weird statistics. And you're going to get scary, quote unquote, evidence. And it's bad science. And all it does is pushes the button of nuclear fear.
Gabe, you have a question.
Actually kind of a statement in a way. Okay, modern nuclear medicine, they use radiation to treat cancer. So it's kind of a rhetorical question, but if they are using radiation to treat cancer, doesn't that kind of show that perhaps that's why those decrease in cancer in that particular statistic? And there are other statistics too. That Hiroshima and Nagasaki, I don't know if both of them, but they found similar statistics for people who are more irradiated during the bombing, that the cancer rates went down.
Well, yeah, well, those are two related things. One is like, I'm going to address the thing about nuclear medicine. Is nuclear medicine has gotten a pass for this whole thing. It's weird. In the public psyche, it's sort of like nuclear medicine is not related to nuclear power because nuclear power is related to nuclear bombs, isn't it? No, but there's this link because it has to do with energy density. This incredible energy density, which is a scary thing. You got a bomb, he's like, damn, that thing can blow up a whole city, and I'm standing right next to it. This is scary. And then you got a chunk of uranium going, hey, if I like crush this into a powder and breathe it, I might get cancer the way you get cancer from smoking tobacco because it has polonium-210 clinging to the leaves, which is how you get cancer from tobacco, aside from like, the smoke and the heat and the carbon and all that nasty stuff, all those stressors, which lowers your immune system. But so there's two separate things. And the weird thing about nuclear medicine is it got a pass. It's like people don't view it as scary dangers. And I think because they do, like the same with the americium-241 in your smoke detector, which is right there. That's my smoke detector. There's americium-241. Oh my God, we're all going to die. No, because the public kind of knows it's not going to blow up the way they know nuclear medicine is not going to blow up, but bombs blow up and reactors have gone splooey. Therefore, one bad, the other one good. And I think that's how primitive the calculation is.
Yeah. We don't have enough data, and I had heard the one anecdote from actual health science physicists at the University of Washington that it would take trillions of actual cases to make the case to prove or disprove the LNT hypothesis.
Well, yeah, it's been said by, I forget who, maybe Ed Calabrese or maybe Thomas Selby, I can't remember who, or maybe Lewis, Cutler and Welsh. One of those guys pointed out that, like, if you have a larger epidemiological study, you're just looking for a needle in a larger haystack. Okay? Because it's the same fuzzy data.
Yeah.
Right. And so doing a study is like, well, we'll do 1 billion people. Well, it's just more number crunching, and maybe AI will help. But the thing is that's the thing. The effects at cellular level look exactly the same as effects by other stressors. So how do you know what it is? And you can only do that by two methods. One is completely isolating the human being from all other stressors, process of elimination, basic 101 science, right? Or you do a big old epidemiological study, or you take the opportunity afforded by a ghastly, horrific event like a nuclear detonation in a city with live subjects, and you use that, and this is the wrong phrasing, you use that as your experiment. I mean, you take my point. This ghastly thing happened, and it's like, well, we can study this. And you have to wait for another one to come along unless you want to abscond a bunch of humans and put them in a chamber somewhere 2 miles below the ground so you can eliminate all peripheral radiation and just zap them with exactly and precisely what you want and see what happens. And maybe we can get somewhere doing that. But in lieu of that, we can't.
I don't think we're tracking these things very carefully. We have
Which
things. Well, we have medical isotope accidents. We had University of Washington Harborview in 2019, May 2nd, May 3rd. We had cesium escape into the building. The only records we have are those workers who were temporarily exposed. We don't have any, study of cancer cases, micro-cancer cases in that region. We're not going to study that. And we study things like cancer incidents around nuclear reactors, except when we accidentally include incomplete reactors. We're just actually studying the occurrence of cancer in industrial areas. And so the science is very often junk science. We're not actually interested in answering this question, I think.
I think it would be very inconvenient to answer the question. And, regarding like studies on people over time that have had radiation, everybody knows about the radium girls. These were young women in World War I that painted radium watch dials, the glow in the dark watch dials for the soldiers, and they would lick their brushes to do their fine work. And some of them got bone cancer. It's like, oh my God, radium is bad. No, some of them got bone. And which ones did? The ones that accumulated more than 10 grays over a 20-year period, and the lethal dose is like 4 or 5 grays. And so they got 5 times the lethal dose spread out over like 20 years. And just those who had the most got some bone cancer, but all the other radium girls did not manifest cancer, and they were all licking the brushes for years.
Did the radium girls really glow in the dark? I mean, we're talking about someone 10 grays.
Well, some of them were just beautiful. Yeah.
Oh, wow.
No, I'm telling you.
They did because they used the paint on Halloween to go out and paint their faces and put on their tongues and such.
Oh, that's so cool. Yeah.
Except a couple of them got like 2nd-degree burns doing it. They put it on kind of heavy.
Happen.
Wow.
Yeah. But to categorically go radiation is dangerous, it's like, well, yeah, if you gorge on it for years, of course it's like if you drink 2 gallons of water in one sitting, you got problems. If you take a whole bottle of aspirin in one sitting, you got problems. But people seem to think that radiation is sort of like some subatomic Death Star, and you get one particule and it goes zooming around in your body. Yeah, it maybe possibly could in some sort of wild statistical 1 in 18 trillion kind of a get that right next to the wrong cell in the wrong part of your body, that kind of a thing, but you get hit by a meteorite.
I see Gabe has a question again.
Yeah, just to make a statement, it would seem to me, and you could tell me if I'm wrong, but the fact that the data, when you get below like 100 millisieverts, which is because it's a safe dose, it's just noise. It's just noise.
That tends to be what the level is about 100 millisieverts a year.
Yeah.
In fact, this is a very interesting bit of history. In 1956, when the U.S. was whipping up their BEAR report, BEAR-1, which is Biological Effects of Atomic Radiation, the first report, 1956. And they're coming up with this like there's no safe dose. And they wanted to release their paper on the same day that the British Medical Research Society released their paper. So the two allies, the UK and the US, would have a unified front on their opinion about the danger of radiation. And we were expecting the British come out and say, yeah, there's no safe dose. Like the Americans to say no safe dose. And so then they're both holding hands going, there's no safe dose. But that didn't happen. And the reason why is because there's a guy in the U.S. named Jim Neal who had been sent to Hiroshima and Nagasaki to study post-bomb effects for 10 years. And he came back saying there's a threshold, or it looks like there might very well be a threshold, and it is definitely worth looking into. Okay. And he was on the BEAR committee, and Mueller was on the BEAR committee, and Mueller was the godfather of LNT, and he basically shut down Neal's presentation like, oh, that's field work, and we can't rely on field work. We have to use laboratory work. And so Mueller's idea of studying radiation is that you would learn more about the radiation effects on humans by zapping 100,000 fruit flies than you would by studying 100,000 people that actually got zapped by the atomic bomb.
Yeah.
So Mueller was like stuck in the laboratory, and he dismissed the field work of Jim Neal, and he was out there with the UN, and they were measuring everything everywhere in Hiroshima and Nagasaki for 10 freaking years and following the medical health of the victims. And he was saying, like, we got a good threshold here. So anyway, he got all pissed off because they shut him down. He went to England with his paper, gave it to the British Medical Research Council, and they absorbed what he came up with. And then in 1956, on the big publishing day where the US and Brits were going to join hands across the pond and release the same data, the Brits are coming out and saying basically 156 millisieverts per year should be fine. Because I did the math in it, and if you take a look, there's their paragraph 50 of their report, and it's a pain in the ass to read because there's all this sciencey stuff. But you break it down, and you get a sense of what they're talking about, and then you do the arithmetic, and it works out to be 156 millisieverts per year.
Yeah,
Okay.
I would point out something too. Even test animals are not completely reliable, and that's very well known in science. I mean, I believe sheep or goats could eat an extraordinary amount of arsenic and not get sick, and it would kill a
Yeah,
human many
in fact,
times
that's
over.
how you get rid of poison ivy is you bring in the sheep or the goats. They love that stuff. Yeah. There was a huge mouse study, it was called the Mouse House, at Oak Ridge from 1947 to 2006. It was like a 62-year study. And they used like 3 million mice over all those years, and they studied the genetics. And what happened was their main research dude or their computer guy, Paul Selby, was digging through the early data to move it into a more modern computer, and he discovered that the numbers were wrong, and they've been wrong all along. And William and Leanne Russell, husband and wife medical team running the Mouse House, they were not counting what's called cluster mutations. Cluster mutations are when these weird mutations crop up in a group of healthy mice, like all of a sudden they have black ears. And then it goes away. And this happens in a population of mice that aren't necessarily breeding with all of each other, but it just sort of arises like all of a sudden, like, green hair and mohawks are cool kind of a thing. And then it goes away. And this is part of a mouse's genetic profile because it shows their degree of susceptibility to and recovery from mutagens or mutations. And so what happened is Selby, he got really bold as he went to the Department of Energy and said, we got to look at this because this 62-year study, this Cadillac of American studies, this sine qua non of American studies has bad numbers. And I know it, and I can prove it. And these guys are rock stars, and they're screwing up. And their DOE is like, damn, that's pretty serious. So they have a meeting at Oak Ridge, and William and Leanne Russell are like these, I mean, they're the rock stars in their field. They ran the Mouse House for 50 frickin' years, and this guy's telling them they've been lying. And so it was a very uncomfortable meeting, and they looked at all the data, and the DOE actually found that Paul Selby was correct. That the Russells had, because they had not counted the cluster or factored in the cluster mutations in the mouse's genetic profiles, they were incorrectly observing and recording what was happening. And as a result, their numbers were wrong. And this is super, super, super important because in 1972, William Russell was on the new Bear Committee, and he waltzes in 1972 and says, hey, I got bad news and good news. And well, first, the good news is there seems to be a bit of a repair threshold in the female reproductive cell. And the committee's like, really? Reproductive cells can repair themselves? And he goes, yeah, but calm down. But we didn't find it in the male. And they're like, oh, dear. Well, you got to slave the regulations to the weakest link in the chain. So we're going to have to say there's no safe dose because there's no safe dose for male sperm. Very, very, very important point. Very important point. Because what happened is when Selby and Calabrese dug into the Russell's numbers, Calabrese used their most conservative admission of error, which was 120%. Selby said he proved 700% error, but the Russells copped 120. The DOE let them slide, will cop into 120% error. So Calabrese uses their corrected numbers and looks at the performance of the male and female reproductive cells over all these years, and he found out that the female cell has a robust repair mechanism, like fabulous, like 27,000 times background radiation. And she's just like, yeah, whatever, bro. I got my groove and I can fix this stuff and screw you. And the male is not as well built in this department, but he did exhibit it as well. And this is the whole key of LNT. And it's like, this is so cool. What I'm about to tell you, we didn't even know until the 1990s. Cellular biology. And this is when Selby brought his case forward. In the 90s, in the 80s and 90s, cellular science got to the point where we could determine exactly what was happening during fusion. What's fusion? That's when the egg goes into the cell and deposits its DNA. And what happens is it's the female that stitches all that stuff together. And she's the one that repairs it all while she's doing it. And the other key thing is there's two stages of sperm, mature and immature. When it matures, that means it's ready to roll. It's ready for action. It's going to have a date with the ladies, right? When it matures, it turns off its repair mechanism. Why? Because if it mates with a female egg, the female's repair mechanisms kick in, and you don't want two cooks in the kitchen. All right? And so this is so cool because the portion of cellular life that Muller and all his compadres were studying was the reproductive portion. Zap the flies, let them mate, and see if the fly babies turn out weird. That's what he was doing. So he was looking at the reproductive stage and the reproductive cells that were engaged in reproduction. Because not all reproductive cells engage in reproduction. All right? They have to mature into that state. When they do, they have half of their DNA. The male has no repair mechanism because he turns it off. And the female has her half her DNA with her robust repair mechanism, and they party, and she pieces it all together. Because when it comes to something as important as the perpetuation of the species, Ken's just Ken and Barbie's the boss. Okay? And so that is what we only found out in about the mid-90s. And for 70 years before that, Muller was, oh yeah, there's no repair mechanism. We're all screwed and don't get zapped or you'll die. And it's just like totally not true. But we didn't find it out till the 90s. And then in 1996, when the Department of Energy had this data, didn't do anything.
Chris.
So they're just like, oh yeah, that's screwed up. So yeah, what are you going to do? Oh, well, yeah, it's screwed up. Yeah, what are you going to do about it? Well, you know, it's screwed up.
But basically what you've been saying is that in spite of new regulations, people saying, I'm comfortable with the way the rules have been, let's not change them, which is a really good way for science to move forward. About your book, I just want to mention that it's got a bibliography, it's got an index, as well as broken up into chapters and such. This makes a pretty good textbook possibility, I think, for high schools or colleges, but yet it's written in a way that a junior high kid should be able to read pretty easily.
Yeah.
So,
well, and Calabrese says in his blurb on the back of the book that the book is good for high school and up.
yes.
You know, and actually it was on the back of the book. Somebody decided to take it off the cover, and I had some harsh words with the person that did so, and I'm sure it will be on the cover in future editions. Let's put it that way. But yeah, Ed Calabrese says directly that the book tells the story, and it tells it in 140 pages, and that and that it should be read by high school on up, which means it tells the story and it's understandable.
A little follow-up. So you've written these two books together, and there'll be a kind of a trilogy when you get your roadmap updated.
Yes.
But when I'm thinking about other books that you latched onto early on as being interesting. I think of
Oh
Gwyneth
yeah.
Craven's book, I think it's Power to the
Oh,
Planet.
yeah, go
That
the Craven book is it was a good one. I really like that. There's this Power to Save the World, I think, or something like that.
okay,
And then
yeah,
of course Spencer Weird's Rise of Nuclear Fear, which is a
Yeah.
more approachable version of the same book that he wrote earlier called Nuclear Fear. He made it accessible to the broader audience, and I highly recommend that because nuclear fear is a very, very deep issue.
uh-huh,
It's
yeah,
really deep. It's fundamental. I mean, it goes right up against, like I mentioned in the earlier podcast, man playing with God, mad scientists, the power to save the world, the power to destroy the world, alchemy, actual freaking alchemy, where you turn uranium into plutonium. Those are two completely and utterly separate elements. And this spooks people.
Hmm.
And it ties in with all sorts of religious and mythological stuff about death rays and gods and the dissolution of space and time, and all that like heavy philosophical stuff. And so nuclear fear is a very, very deep subject. You can get some atavistic fear going on by pushing that button. It's just a different order of fear.
Last time we really interrogated the motivations. We didn't think it was explicitly malicious. These days, with all the anti-nuclear organizations, not so sure.
Well, with all the anti-nuclear organizations, a lot of that is like aging boomers that got turned off to nuclear by 3 Mile Island, which is so ridiculous. The average downwind dose of 3 Mile Island was scary. No doubt. I
that's
mean, I
right.
was scared
Yes,
the hell out of it. It was a holy crap, a real. And then when the dust cleared, no pun intended, the average downwind dose was less than one human chest X-ray.
It scared the hell out of me. I'll tell you.
Scared the hell, yeah, it's scary shit. Pardon my French. And but the thing is, it's like it was, and but people are still freaked out. 35 years after we know or should know that it was less than a human chest X-ray for the average downwind person. But that's an excuse to get off of nuclear and build out coal? Or clutter up the landscape of wind and solar? Wait till you read Roadmap to Nowhere. Oh my God, gentlemen. Oh
Yeah.
my God. I'll give you one little statistic in Roadmap to Nowhere. When you add up all the stuff that Jacobson calls for and the new transmission, not the existing, the square miles cumulative of corridors and farms, 122,600 square miles.
I
And 46,000 of that is the offshore regions. That's the footprint that he wants for powering the country, largely predicated on an unscheduled chest X-ray.
And how much would nuclear take up? About 150 square miles, roughly?
Well, if it was all large Gen 3 jumbo reactors with adequate perimeters, it'd be about 300 or 400 miles. If
Okay.
it was, now here's the thing. In Roadmap to Nowhere, we design a nuclear grid and we go, okay, well, a large number of these reactors will be on brownfield sites. What's a brownfield site? An old coal plant, an old gas plant. They are wired for production. They have turbines, they have generators, switching yards. They're zoned for energy production, and they have a freaking corridor. So the basic concept of Roadmap to Nowhere is take out bad heat, put in good heat. So the footprint of our energy system would not expand if it was nuclearized. In fact, it would shrink because with small modular reactors, you can put the reactor where it's needed and eliminate the corridor in some instances. Like right now in Los Angeles, we have a corridor from El Segundo to downtown going through some buku real estate. Give it back to the public. Or have the energy companies sell it off to defray the cost of building the SMR. On top of that, nuclear barges, that has a reactor in it, that's a power plant, that's water mobile, that you tow around and tie up wherever. And we have the best river system in the world. We have hundreds, if not thousands, of small cities and towns, thousands along navigable rivers. tow a reactor, tie it up to the port. You got power, plug it in, plug and play. You need no nuclear personnel on shore. It's totally plug and play. It's ridiculous how small of a footprint a nuclear grid would be.
Let me ask you something. Is that nuclear barge, is that conceptually doable right now? Oh,
Well,
a
yeah,
nuclear barge, yeah. Is that
yeah, sure. I mean,
conceptually doable right
we've
now?
been doing nuclear powered ships for like 70 years. The USS Nautilus,
But
which
you
had
can
a
make
light
it
water
small enough
reactor
for
in
a
it.
barge, though. Barge is a lot
Well,
smaller.
you just don't have a motor in it. You have a boat with a reactor with no motor, and you tow the thing where you want it. And the ones that Thorcon is building are seaworthy, so you can tow it during a freaking hurricane.
Yeah.
You know, it's what's called a class one vessel or whatever. And you tow it into port, you tie it off, you ballast it, you plug it into the local supply. It's also a great humanitarian gesture during a natural disaster. Can you imagine if we did that with Haiti after the earthquake?
Oh my goodness.
And here's the thing: is we had nuclear powered warships in the Caribbean at the time, and I'm like, U.S. Navy, drive in there. You got hot water, you got electricity, you got cold water, you got showers, and instead they're helicoptering water into town. You
And they
know,
had
I mean,
able-bodied seamen aboard that could have gone ashore for a week or so to help out.
or not even gone ashore, just like hang a hose over the side, go, here's all the fresh water you want. Here's all the hot water you want. Here's all the electricity you want.
Yeah,
Fix your stuff, and we'll be here to supply you water and power.
yeah.
Can you imagine the humanity, the sense of the humanitarian gesture and the soft power that you would have by doing that?
Yeah. But to specifically answer Gabe's question, the Russians have the academic Lomonosov already in the Arctic Circle. I think they have two barges that are operating, definitely one, and I know that they are planning to build are building at the moment like another 4 or 5 or 6 more barges like that. And there are nuclear powered icebreakers. There's just an article recently on Finland. It's going to be making possibly up to 12 icebreakers for the United States Coast Guard. Nuclear powered
Yeah, because we don't
icebreakers.
build them anymore.
No,
Yeah.
we haven't for like 30 years or so.
No, that's the thing. And that's why I say, like, getting roadmap to nowhere is like people are like, oh, reactors take forever to build and they cost a fortune. No, they do in America. South Korea has been successfully and routinely building large light water reactors for less than $4,000 an installed kilowatt. Real simple. Hire the Koreans, have them build a reactor or 2 or 3 here, which those reactors that I'm talking about, the APR 1400, are approved for U.S. construction. Hire the South Koreans to build a reactor on the condition that we get to watch every single thing they do from soup to nuts. So they're going to charge us an extra $1 billion. So what? So that's 5 billion instead of 4. We spend 14 bill or 23 billion on Vogel or whatever that we spent on it. You know, hire the Koreans so they can show us how we can build the thing that we invented.
Amazing.
What are the prospects for LNT going into the Dust Bowl of history anytime soon?
I don't know about that because here's the thing: is somebody mentioned earlier about how I can't remember how it's easy to use or it's simple. The thing is it's not just simple; it's been institutionalized as deeply as, and this is a very imperfect example, as deeply as pasteurization is in the milk industry. It's an inherent, integral part of the entire industry, and rules and regulations are all tinker toy structured around it. And like Doge, you can't go in there with a chainsaw, you should go in there with a scalpel. And I'm concerned that this new political climate is going to sweep away this stuff, and then there's just going to be a technological backlash when another administration comes in because you took away my rice bowl. I mean, here's my nuclear regulation thing that I built a whole company around. You're telling me it's BS? And so it's institutionalized. And I don't think institutions, they don't disappear, they unravel.
Thank you for watching. This has been the Ecomodernist channel live. We broadcast right here on YouTube at Ecomodernist 1, the Ecomodernist channel, at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. You can also find us on Facebook at the Ecomodernist Society of North America. You can find us rebroadcast on many of my channels. I'm Carl Alex Pauls on X.com, on LinkedIn, and soyaddle.tv or Soyaddle on Twitch. You can find us online at esna.earth, that's esna.earth, and on Patreon. Please support us on Patreon. Look for the Ecomodernist channel. And remember, missions first, peace and justice will follow.
Please subscribe to us on YouTube, Ecomodernist channel. Also to subscribe to us on Twitter and Facebook, Ecomodernist Society of North America.
And online at https://esna.earth.